Here are 3 incredibly boring tools that make me way more productive. Now, in our pursuit of more productivity, it is really tempting to go down the rabbit hole of more sophisticated tools and softwares, and you need this fancy thing over here to manage all of this and have these crazy dashboards and all this stuff. And it doesn't work in my experience. It's really interesting, actually. I was having a conversation maybe a week or 2 or maybe even longer ago with you, Anuj, about like Notion and about Asana and like these tools and like how do you use them and the idea of the second brain. And then we did a podcast on this where it's like, the way that I use those tools is actually quite unsophisticated. And whenever I see somebody with a complex system for productivity, I instantly know that they are not very productive because they spend more time developing the system than they do executing the things within the system. And it's a trap that I've fallen into when I was younger, which is that like complex systems obscure true effectiveness because there's just so many pieces moving. You think, oh, this must be working really well. But you can't actually see the output so clearly. And so as I've gotten older, I've just tried to strip away the complexity and the advanced toolings that I use and just go back to the basics. And so these 3 tools, they're boring, they're simple, but they are incredibly impactful. The first one is a whiteboard. It's a whiteboard. It's simple. And you go, okay, that doesn't sound like much, but there's something expansive about sitting down and putting your ideas onto a board and seeing them visually laid out in a larger than life manner. So not just on a piece of paper. Like sometimes I think journaling, one of the issues with it is it's constrictive by nature of the tool that you're using. A piece of paper is only an 8x11. And so your thoughts have to be constricted within that space. And that can be very powerful. Don't get me wrong. Like taking the chaotic jumble of thoughts that are flying through your mind at any given moment and putting them to the page, constricting them through your pen into the notebook, that is a powerful resource because sometimes we just have too much expansive thought. But it can also be constrictive when you want to do brainstorming, right? That you only have so much room to work with. And then because you're working with maybe pen, you don't want to make a mistake, right? The whiteboard is great because you don't have any other restrictions. You can draw things big. You can put big words, little words. You can erase them when they don't make sense. You can draw shapes. You can mind map everything out and see it in front of you. And it's a great brainstorming tool. It's a great productivity tool, especially when you're working with other people, because now they can see your mind and your collaborative consciousness on the board together. So a whiteboard has been incredibly powerful for me, and I was reminded of this recently because at Invictus we have this giant whiteboard, and we have a bunch of whiteboards that we use all the time for all sorts of different things. And since we moved into our apartment that we've been in for 2.5 years now, I never bothered to put my whiteboard back up on the wall. And just last week I asked Anush, hey, bring me a whiteboard from the office, bring it here so I can have it. And then this last week of just having that tool, the last couple of days, I'm like, this is why we have this tool. This is so much better than I even remember. So get yourself a whiteboard, and that's the number 1 productivity tool. Okay, number 2, going the opposite direction. You have this big expansive tool in the whiteboard, but then you have to have a way of distilling all of the things that need to get done in the day or all the different projects that you could be working on into something manageable. And so on the opposite side, I use note cards, just a simple note card. And every day I like to sit down and on that note card, just write down what are the things that I need to get done. And just by the limit of space that I have available to me constricts how much I can put there. And it's a good reminder that you can only get so much done in a day. You can only cram so much onto the note card. And so you have to get really good at prioritizing and saying, what are the most important things to put on this card? I can't put 50 different things. What are the 5 things that I could put here? If I could only put 3, what would those 3 things be? And then because the note card's so transportable, you can put it into your pocket. You can put it right in front of you on your computer. You can have it accessible in front of you as a trigger throughout the day to say, hey, am I actually working on one of those 3 things that I said was the most important? And just that alone, like interrupting the patterns that will occur throughout the day as we get distracted and pulled off task and get pulled into social media, get pulled into emails, and you go, wait a minute, emails didn't make it onto my note card. Yeah, sure, emails might be important, but they're not the 3 most important things. And that can help you just get back on the track, because a lot of times productivity isn't about doing more, it's about doing less, but doing it better, being effective and staying on task with the things that will actually move the needle forward. So first tool is the whiteboard. Second tool is a note card. Third tool is a pen. It's just a pen. It's really simple, But the pen is mightier than the sword. I think the pen might be the most powerful tool in existence. I don't think it gets nearly enough love. And the reason for that is because a lot of research has been done that shows there is a unique, interesting link between your motor skills and the way that you remember things, like the way that your neural networks in your brain light up. A significant portion of your brain has evolved for movement. Because if you think about it's like the first thing that really evolved in a human was that motor cortex, because without that, you're just a pile of cells. You can't do anything. You can't move. It wasn't until there was a motivating stimulus and an ability to move forward in the environment that we as humans in our single, multiple, very primitive celled existence started to move through the environment, started to interact with it. And so as we as humans have evolved, that motor cortex has become incredibly sophisticated for us to see a target out into space and then to move towards it. And one of the really interesting things, and I don't know if you've ever stopped to reflect on this, is that a lot of the flow state that humans experience, where you kind of lose track of time, space, and your sense of self, it occurs when you're in motion. It occurs for a reason when you're in flight, when you're doing an activity. And it's because your brain, the human brain, has developed to be moving and interacting with the universe. Now, as we become more cubicalized, humans living in cubicles, sitting at computers and not moving through the world, that part of our brain has kind of atrophied. And we're not really living, and expressing ourselves in alignment with how our bodies have developed. And so, all that's to say is there's a lot of research that shows when we use our body to physically manifest our thoughts, those thoughts have more robust implications. And it's not just enough to sit and move your fingertips on a keyboard, because that's not a lot of motion. And yet something about a pen and handwriting and moving and physically linking your thought into reality, that is a very, very powerful connection. And I think it gets lost. And I've personally experienced the power of this, where you can literally write yourself into existence. You can write ideas into existence through the pen tip. And so I encourage you, if you want to be more productive, to go back to the basics, to go become a primitive human. Get yourself a whiteboard, get yourself a notebook, and get yourself a pen, and just write everything out. It's way more powerful than the fancy little check boxes in your Notion or into your Asana with the little unicorn and the narwhal when you check things off. It's so much more powerful when you physically write it down and you cross it off, or you just take your thoughts and you just write about them. So get yourself a really good pen that you like using. Get yourself a whiteboard. Get yourself some note cards and go crush the day. Go be productive. What are you doing? Stop being a potato. See you guys in the next episode.